Okay, now I've got with me Norman Buckland's brother. Is it elder brother or younger brother?
Yeah, older brother Neil.
What can you tell me about Norman and his antics when he was younger? Or
Yeah, Norman and I, my parents were going through a messy divorce when we was about 9 or 10, and they decided the best thing for us was to go out. My gran had a house over in Spain in Javier. And little did myself and Norman know that we thought we was only going out there for a little breather, for a break. We were going out to live and ended up going to school. And it was a beautiful, beautiful town called Javier. And we went to school in the town itself. Very Catholic school, very different from what we were used to. But we were different. We were foreigners. We looked different. We acted different. And so on. And myself being 10 years of age, I always looked out for my kid brother. And I come across something really different, which was my biggest wake-up call at that age. There was a kid called Pepe Navi. Never forget his name, and I'll never forget him either, who took exception to me. Norman, I think, was quite obvious. If you pushed him, he pushes you back, and so on. But with me, I think the divorce with my parents, it was affecting me as well. I was a little bit nervy at that time.
it hit you?
Yeah, it hit me. I knew there was something wrong, and I think it was more for me they moved us both away. There was a lot of screaming and shouting and cups and saucers flying about the place. But nevertheless, we took up going to school in the town, and beautiful, and we didn't know, we just got on with things. But there was this lad called Pepe Navi that started having a pop at me. And it was getting very pushy, and every time he saw me, he'd beeline for me, started pushing me. If I was eating my sandwiches, he'd take the sandwich off me. At that time, I didn't know what to do about it. If he'd have pushed Norman, I'd have been straight in, and I don't know what I'd have done to him. Because it was me, it was different. So what happened was, I think Norman blouted it out to my gran over the breakfast one day, and she went, "Nan, Alfie's having a problem with this kid at school." Well, my nan being a good old North London girl, she went, "You fucking what?" And and she went, "Right, I'm going to show you what my fucking buck used to do when he was a kid." Right, and he would put a coin, and she gave me a half peseta coin. I mean, she really spoiled us. And I remember it had a hole in the middle. And she said, "My buck would hold a coin, and he would not fucking let go of it. And if anyone come at him, he would fucking chin him." And she gave me this coin. I held on to it. I'll never forget holding on to it all day long. And we went to school, and I was waiting for this kid to start on me. I didn't know what was going to happen, how it was going to pan out. But I remember it all built up to the end of the day, and we got on this bus to go home, and this Pepe Navi come at me, and he started pushing me, and I looked up, and this was it. And I let go with this explosion, with this coin in my hand, and his nose completely splattered. And I couldn't stop hitting him, and it was just a release. Suddenly I knew I had this incredible weapon, and then everyone jumped in, started pulling us apart. I mean, not that he was trying to fight back, he didn't know what was going on. And I remember my gran leaning over, she happened to be on the bus, which I never knew, hitting him with her brolly, going, "You fucking keep up with it, you bastard, you don't." Well, that was the first wake-up call for me, that I had something very special, and it was that left hand. It was only there for defence, never there to, because Norman and I were never bullies.
No.
We never did bully anybody. We only looked after ourselves and our own, and so on. And as from that day on, my whole outlook on life was completely different, and it never ever happened again. So then, we then, I mean, really, it's not a huge deal to talk about with Spain. Apart, I mean,
They gang fight.
it was, I mean,
Always fighting. They were fighters.
yeah.
So the Spanish are lovely people. I love them, I do. But we was always fighting with them all the time. Well, they didn't speak English.
You had two lots, didn't you? You had the Pueblo lot, and then you had the Puerto lot. The Puerto lot were the rough boys, and they saw us as the posh boys at school. And whenever we went down to the Puerto, it would kick off again. Have a go with English boys. But me and Norman were firmed up by then, and we used to have it. We used to have it with them, and we never hesitated at all. They soon learned to respect us. They're not saying that. The majority of all them kids were lovely kids. They come from great families, but there were some arseholes that wanted to have it with us, and we knew how to give it to them. And their parents and so on respected us because we stood up for ourselves. And we then actually loved where we were set and living in Spain. We loved the school, we loved the town, and we often go back there to visit. And Norman's still good friends with a lot of the Spanish boys there now that we went to school with.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, we was out there probably 2-3 years. I had to come back from it to try and catch up some education, which I never did. It never worked. Yeah. So I come back when I was about 13, and then went off to the Grange School. But I was miles behind everybody.
Did Norman come back at that age, or did he?
No, Norman came back. He came back.
Kept coming and going.
Yeah, he kept coming and going. He come back probably a year after me. And again, like with Norman, education was always a problem. Yeah. But our education was that. That was our education, and it was a beautiful education because it taught us unity and how to stand up for ourselves and look after each other. You know. So
tell us about the rave scene that you was involved in. Was that? Is it like the Essex Boys film that everyone's been seeing?
I've not actually seen the Essex Boys film. I mean, this is the first time I've ever talked about it. I was involved with a guy called Tony Colson-Hayter, and he was over Milton Keynes, Bletchley Way, doing arcade machines and so on. And he used to pay us to look after his machines. But then I remember he called on me one day and said, Alfie, come up to Legends in the West Land. It was a new scene. I mean, I've been used to the pub scene where people are getting pissed up and you know, come 12 o'clock, they're either being sick, wanting a scrap, or just being an absolute nuisance, you know. And to go to Legends and see all these ravers, right, which I didn't know what to call them at the time, doing something different. And what Tony was interested in me seeing was how they all behaved when they came out. And they come out of Legends at 3 o'clock and they were all looking for somewhere to go. And he said, these people need entertainment. They need they're looking for a party. And he said, with your boys, he said, do you think we could organise some security and I could set the venues up? Yeah. And that was the start of it. The first venues were Linford Film Studios in Wembley, and were called Apocalypse Now. And Tony was involved with a guy called Roger Goodman, who was in the music industry. So a lot of the big celebs were there, and at first it was about 300 people involved, starting at 10 o'clock at night, going right through till 10 o'clock the following morning. The hours, okay, yeah, I wasn't used to them long hours, but there was no bloody trouble. The thing is, we did that one, like three nights, not 3 weeks in a row, and each time the amount of people trying to get in was building up, and it went from 300 up to like 400, up to 700, and then we had 700 people outside trying to get in. Wow. And it just went mad. And it obviously this wasn't gonna last forever. The old bill obviously moved in and called it a day, but it opened my eyes up. And this was, on that day, it was all structured around paying on the door. It was only the venue itself wasn't big enough. So then we started looking then to get bigger venues, and then we moved on. Then, literally trying to find people to locate, and there was guys literally out there looking for warehouses or whatever we could find. I mean, this is what 1988. And the acid house thing was already underway by then, but Tony knew how to get right underneath it and get the ball rolling. It meant me then really going to ground and really thinking very hard about what type of security guys I could get in. I knew most of the guys I already had were going to do the job brilliantly if we were going to start building up and going to bigger venues. But I needed some more backup, some more serious backup. And I mean, they were coming, paratroopers, SAS guys were coming in because they liked that type of scene. You imagine being we were moving around the countryside, and the venues were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But each time we made success, the old bill was slowly moving in to find a way of blocking it. Or the hardest thing of all was if if the police could get there before we could set up, or before the punters got there, and if they got there before, they would close it down. So we had to try and outgun and outweigh everything, you know. So that was the initial start of what was going to be hugely successful. The sunrise, because Apocalypse Now isn't a good sound for any party, and also we were teamed up with someone that was a complete waste of time anyway. And I remember us all sitting around a table trying to work out what we were going to call this organisation, Sunset and Sunblast and whatever. But we got the name Sunrise, and that stuck. And they became some of the biggest, they were the biggest rave parties they were ever held in the UK, and respected by pretty much everyone. All the other party organisers respected them as well. I mean, we moved all over the country. We were up in Norfolk, down in Bristol. We moved then I mean, some of the other areas, because it wasn't easy to get the venues, we then had to move into East London, where we met some really interesting characters. There was a guy called Wayne Anthony, who helped us with Lea Bridge Road, and he's went on then to do his own race, and also is big in the showbiz side of things now. But he said to us, he said, if you want to work around East London, there's a firm here that you know we need to start thinking about. They can find venues anywhere, and it was the ICF. It was the West Ham boys. I knew who they were, and I knew some of the front runners, not personally, but I was a Chelsea boy myself, so I knew what they were about. I wasn't too happy about where this might be going, but through Wayne and a couple of other connections, we met up with a couple of their front boys, and one of the names was Andy Swallow. And we put this do on in Greenwich. They found a venue for us, and I mean, they brought their boys. There was about 80 of their guys, and there was about 30 plus of ours. I mean, my guys were all professionally trained. Not just that, Neil. We worked as a unit. You know, we trusted each other. We were solid. We were gonna. We didn't go, and I think that reflects really well on whoever is coming. Where their guys, I respected what they were about. I knew that they had an awesome reputation, and we certainly weren't going there to disrespect them in any way at all. But they were like, most of their guys were hanging around the side doors and everything, sharpening their knives up and whatever was going on. And I think they looked and they realised they weren't going to intimidate us. We weren't there to be taken, No. And I think by then, it was getting late in that football side of things. I think a lot of them realised there was a business to be involved with now, and it wasn't in their interest to want to have a tear up and ruin it all then, because I think they really did generally want to go on and put their own parties on. I mean, it wasn't all doom and gloom and whatever. We put this party on in Greenwich, and I remember overlooking, lovely location it was, and we brought in a guy called Clinton, who's one of the top Arsenal faces. We knew they all knew each other, respected each other, and so on. But I never forget, my main objective, my main thing of the evening, apart from making sure everything was safe, the doors were safe and no one was getting in without paying and blah, 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 was making sure our cut was getting out to where it should be going. And I got the call to get this, that we were going to do the pickup, like from the office. And Swallow was in the office, and Clinton was with me. And we had to go and collect the dosh, our cut of the dosh, and get it out off the premises. And I spoke to my guy, Phil, who was a paratrooper, and I said, Phil, get the car around the side. We're doing the thing now. And I remember him looking at me really strange, and he sort of, he would never answer back. He'd never question me at all. But I said, come on, just get on with it. Just get the bloody car around. This is, it was quite a serious situation, because we didn't know what their intentions were. Did they want to do the parties? Did we have a future together, or were they going to just try and rob us and be done with it? So I remember getting to that office, and Clinton and Andy Swallow both spotted each other. I remember Andy Swallow going, "All right, Clint," and Clint going, "All right, Swallow." And I mean, Clint was I remember seeing him around, you know, a lot of the raves and things, always immaculately dressed, always had 2 or 3 suits that used to change throughout the evening. Really cool looking dude, you know, a real cool guy, but very serious, a real serious guy. And we got our side of the money. Big Norm was on the firm. We carried a dosh out. Norman was carrying a dosh, and we got round the corner, and right in front of us, with its tail ready for the big getaway, was this fucking two-door hatchback, right? Fucking Ford Fiesta or something. I've never been so embarrassed in my life. So anyway, Phil's looking at me as if saying, Alfie, I warned you, I was trying to warn you. Well, what happened was he had his missus' car on this occasion, right? He normally drives a great big bloody Merc, but we'd have all been, you know, that was the ideal getaway. So Norm and Clint started getting in the car, with obviously another guy was going to be on the front seat as well. And then suddenly I saw their backsides, the worst was yet to come, the backsides slowly creeping out of the back of the side of the car. I was thinking, what is going on? Phil then had to run round from the driver's side to pull out the baby seat, right? And it's like, no. Anyway, they've got in the car, I think the clutch was half burning out as they're trying to get away. The exhaust is smashing on the bloody ground as it's going over the potholes. I think the ICF felt sorry for us on this occasion and let us get away with it because it was too embarrassing to try and to try and take this one on. But we, I think we did another 1 or 2 raves of them. It was never going to work. What's that?
Isle of Dogs. Isle of Dogs.
That's, yeah, we did the Isle of Dogs and Greenwich, all that area. But they was on their own agenda. I mean, they were going to conquer Essex and all that area. We were more up North London and surrounding areas. So we moved away. But our parties and the sunrise really started happening. Tony Cosnay was very, very intelligent, very streetwise. He was so far ahead of the scene at the time. The one thing he sorted out was the non-payment on doors. We had to stop that because that was putting us in jeopardy. Yeah. And he started up these parties where where we had ticket agents selling tickets in advance through Soho, shops in Soho. Also, the movement of locating blocks of traffic all around Newport Pagnell and sending the ravers in slowly to where we wanted them to go, to the party. One of the biggest raves we did, again there was another little funny story with this, was White Waltham, Cherry Garden Lane. It was a big aerodrome, and the deal was with us, we had to, I mean Tony, we sorted out the venue, paid up front and everything, but we had to get all the production in, get all that set up. We normally did that on the Friday, and I'd have a skeleton amount of security around the place. And then all the boys then get all the production set up, we all get moving and so on. But on this particular day, I'll never forget, I got a call through on my radio, and it was like, Alfie, there's a Mercedes at the front on the gate. I said, well, what about it? And they said they want to speak to you. They've got permission to come in here. And I thought, shit, there shouldn't be anyone coming here at all. And our biggest fear was anyone finding out what we were doing. 2, another party organiser also coming in and ruining it for us. But this, on this occasion, I said, let them through, I want to see who it is. And they came in, we drove them right into the warehouse, and or to the aerodrome. And it was a guy called Jeremy Taylor, who was a party organiser for Energy. Wow. And he walked straight on us, setting up for a big rave. And he couldn't believe his eyes. He was there, literally to view his for his own rave. Yeah. And we were trying to bullshit and say, no, this isn't a rave, it's a filming do we're doing. But he knew exactly what we was doing. And he said, don't worry, I'm going to say a word. But if he'd have picked the phone up, we'd have been fucked, because so much money was being pumped into these raves at the time that, you know, all the security, the production, and everything, and all the money up front to pay for the venues, that it could have gone really badly wrong. But he didn't, and it turned out to be one of the biggest ones we put on. It was massive. There's about 10,000 came to that, and it was hugely successful. But the police afterwards, I remember they took Tony to court, over in Maidenhead, and I was there. I attended with one of my security guys, and they tried to get him as an illegal party, and tried to win over on the technicalities, but the magistrates wouldn't have it, and it became then the first legally successful rave ever held in our country, and that was the door opening up for us. But the old bill wasn't having too much of that. They, once the Home Office got involved, the government got involved, they were looking at the clause then, how to close it all down, which they did eventually. I mean, we put on another few good big pies. One of them was at Longwick Village, which is not far from where we live here. I mean, probably about 25 to 30,000 attended that rave, and by that time I built up to around 200 security guys. There was like 100 on one night and 100 on another. It was a 24-hour do. But again, another funny incident. I'd rather reflect on the funny things that happened, because we had there was never any grief. We had in 33 parties, we never had one public disorder. The old bill really didn't have a problem with us at all, but it was become a battle of wits, trying to find a way of stopping it. At this point, they knew they couldn't. If they could get there beforehand, then they'd have beaten us. But by law, they were really struggling. There was one morning in particular, we'd hired it was just a big open field off a guy called Stuart McIntyre, farmer in Longwick Village. And I don't know what we told him, we were putting on a blinking dancing or whatever, school disco or something. And he was fine. Oh, my family like little pies. Can they come along? And we went, yeah, it's no problem. But anyway, the scaffolding boys were local boys. Pete Kearney from Aylesbury and his family. They all got there really early on the Saturday morning. And next month I was in Winslow with Tony, and we got a phone call. Alfie, get here straight away. Got problems. I said, what's up? They said the old bill have come in a big Range Rover. There's an inspector, a sergeant, a couple of other big lumpy guys. They've got Stuart in the motor, and they're driving around the field, round and round and round, doing about 80 miles an hour, literally giving him grief. And they're literally, their fingers pointing in his face and everything. So all they could see was this farmer's big red face going around his field, non-stop. By the time we got from Winslow to Longwick Village, which was about half an hour's drive, they were still going around the field. And I couldn't believe it. They were just doing their last final few laps. And I think it may have been on behalf of us that they kept it going, knowing we were going to be there. So me and Tony turned up, and they pulled up by his farmhouse. And Stuart got out, and they had old Bill wrapped round him. There's like bodyguarding him at this point. And Tony's like absolutely, we put so much into it. There was so much dough had gone in, because this was the big one. And we knew the law was behind us as far as the written law, but these were trying to desperately stop it. And Tony was shouting out to Stuart, come on, you all right? Don't you talk to me, Tony! It's one of them acid hills parties, isn't it? And Tony went, no, Stuart, come on, we've got an agreement, we've written it all down, you've made a contract. Oh, you don't care about no contract? I've heard it's an acid hills party, have you seen what they're doing to me? So anyway, they ushered him off into his farmhouse, and all we could hear coming from his window, they wouldn't let me or Tony into the house at all, and they're still pointing their finger and giving it to him and so on. And his big red cherry face you could see through the window. There was a sergeant, a red-head sergeant from Tame, kept coming out and giving us an update. Lovely fella, mind you. He was really relaxed and very polite with us. And all we could hear was, I didn't know what they were doing. I don't care about what it is. I don't like all this. And after about half an hour, 3/4 an hour, he come out and he went, do you know what? From 0. It's now 50-50. Yeah. And then suddenly we heard, I want my solicitor here right now before I say another word. They still wouldn't let me and Tony in. Next minute the briefs turned up, briefcase, on a Saturday morning, probably better things to do. And in he goes. Next minute the cops come out again, he goes, 70-30 in your favour now. Well, being a good old Bucks farmer, he wasn't stupid. Stuart wasn't being intimidated by anyone. For that hardship, he knew if he said no, there's no party. He knew there was no £5 grand. He knew there was nothing coming his way, and it'd all be all for nothing. He then suddenly the pound sign went up. His brief then came out and said, pulled Tony aside. They were whispering around the corner. He wanted another £5 grand out of us. Tony, not being a fool at all. I mean, most people would have jumped at it because of what the revenue was, for the, which we knew would take on the. Tony went, no, we've got a deal, we've got a contract. He's got to honour that. This is not an illegal party. This is a legal party. It's well within the law, and I can prove that. And I'll take it to court if I need to. And Tony was very clever that way. He was really pushing it out properly. And he said, well, if we add a few conditions in, that you clear the place up afterwards, blah, blah, blah. But again, Tony was adamant that he didn't deserve any more, but I think he got another £2.5 grand out of it. So he went up to £7.5 grand with conditions that we were going to make sure the place was immaculate afterwards. And it was one of the best parties I've ever seen. And we had like 200 security all the way round. I've got photos, I've got great memories of it. No trouble whatsoever. But I knew that it was getting sticky, that the old bill were getting upset. We did have a couple more parties on there. We had one in Santa Pod, where they have all the race track days and so on, where the police then said, okay, if you want to run and have these parties, you've got to pay for us to be involved. So that was costing another 30 grand to have them guys involved. We wanted out to take the piss out of the police. Tony knew what the laws were. And he flouted those laws and worked on the pushed the law as far as he could. But they were ready to come down. There was shit going down all up with other raids where bad things were happening, and we were trying to keep our heads up so it wasn't reflecting us. But I think they knew, bring down Sunrise, and then things would start crumbling. And this is what I think the aim of the authorities were. So really, that was 89 by then. It was called the Summer of Love. We then realised then that the authorities were coming down, and they changed the laws. They brought in the noise pollution law, and also they brought in a new law where a gathering of so many people in a public place, where they can just walk in and just go right. They were nicking equipment before the party started and confiscating everything. It was over. It was over. But they encouraged us to go into the clubs, which we did. We then took on a nightclub in Kensington called In on the Park. By this time we had a huge mailing list. Again, Tony was very clever. He sent out invites to all the beautiful Chelsea girls in all the what's they called the
showgirls.
All the showgirls. Well, yeah, but the classy girls, all the model agencies and so on, and did a deal with them if they got there before a certain time. But once you go into any nightclub and you've got nothing but classy girls there dancing away, it adds a good environment. And that went for about 3 years, and that was a great experience. But again, you have to move on.
Yes, yeah, you do. You also know the author of Parker's Tales?
Yeah, Norman Parker, yeah, very good friend of mine. I met him back in the early 80s. I mean, he was just finishing off a life sentence, and we became good friends. I mean, he was a serious, probably the most serious villain I've ever met. But he took to me for some reason. He kept saying I could see myself in you, and so on and so on. And he wanted to. I think he saw that I was slightly misdirected. This was before the raids, remember?
Yeah.
And he could see I was a little bit. I was floating about a little bit, as they say, you know.
Yeah.
I was fit then, but he then helped train me up, and he gave me a training program. Me and him used to train together. We worked out most days, but we had a training thing we did 3 times a week, like a circuit training. Only me and him were doing, and I got so phenomenally fit. It was unbelievable. It was scary. I felt like I was floating. And when some boys here today that know what it's like when you're that fit, you just feel like you want to just run.
Yeah.
You just want to get in. And when in the meantime, my dad had started up a boxing club called Medical Boxing in Aylesbury, which my brother and my dad was it was all going well at that point, but it became a fascinating club, and it was three nights a week, Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays, and we used to do a Sunday morning as well. But a lot of the boys from Ellsworth Golf Club also came to that club, and I then got really involved in it, and it got where we were getting interest, because I was a counter-puncher. I was a southpaw when Norman was orthodox, and Norman was just Norman. I mean, he just took on people and he just ate them in the ring, you know. I didn't like getting hit, you know. Going back to my school days going back to my happier days, I didn't like getting hit, and I still had that coin in my hand as far as I was concerned, and it was a case of feeling them out, moving about. I loved moving about the ring and being light on my feet. Letting them, you know, and just counter punch, and then waiting for that big one, and it was working. It was working every time. We had an incredible record between us, but I attributed a lot of that to Norman Parker, who I continue, even to today, I still continue great friends with him, and he's been a huge influence on my life.
And you've got the original manuscript as well.
I've got his original manuscript, yeah. Even while he was away, he was looking for a publisher for the Parkhurst Tales, and he asked me if I knew any contacts at all in that field. Again, with Tony Colson-Hayter, we spoke about it, and there was a guy called Henry Thomason who was co-director for the Bill at that time. We're talking early 80s, I think. I went and spoke with him. I said, read this, and these were the original manuscripts. This was handwritten. Yeah. This wasn't a copy of any kind. So I was trusted with his life story, and the only copy there was. So I saw Henry. Henry sat down and he said, Alfie, that was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. He said, but I'm not the man. And through Henry, we found a publisher, and Parkhurst Tales become one of the biggest, the biggest paperbacks today. He's then gone on to write another 6 or 7 books, and there's a book called Life After Life, which has given me a good mention. And he's honoured me by saying I'm one of the most genuine guys he's ever met, and really commented me in a very, very nice way in it. Yeah, but great stuff and great memories. But regards to that, the boxing was, going back to my dad, to have my brother, myself, and he was the trainer, was the pinnacle of his life. That was so important to him, and to see us winning. I mean, we could never box. When we ever went into competitions, we could never box at the same weight. No. I went as 91 kilos. Norman was always 81. A bit lighter than me, I'm afraid, Norm. Yeah. Back then. But we'd never meet each other in any competition. That was the whole point of it. But we had to have different trainers. We could never spar together. No. We did try that a few times. Myself being a counter puncher, and there was the Rocky scene back then. You know what I mean? Eye of the Tiger. We used to play that all the time, and it was like I'm the man, and all the rest of it. But once I got Norman rolled up, he used to start pulling his punches, and any boxer knows, once your discipline goes, you're leaving yourself open. But he was cute. Norman was always cute. He would know how to dig me out as well. And next minute, it was almost the gloves were off, and we would be at each other. It was just red mist completely, and everyone was jumping in the ring, pulling us apart. And my dad said, "That's it. No more with them two. Them two do not spar each other. Give us 5 minutes, cool down, and we were up with each other again. We loved each other again."
So how do you feel about the idea of Norman getting a book out?
I think it's a fabulous idea. Now, my brother, I love very, very much. I love him more than anything in the world. He's my only brother. He's fought everybody. And he's not fought because he's wanted to. He's not fought. Norman's a survivor. He's fought most of what he's done through survival, and it's built up and built up. He has had 1 or 2 idiots around him, I'm afraid, that have been geeing him the wrong way. Yeah. But I will be the first to jump on Norman over it. I want to see Norman now earn from what and have the respect. I know Norman's got the respect there, but I want to see things now. I want to see things really, you know, really happened for Norman in the right way. He's retired from the Guvnor title now. He was open arms to any taker, and every taker he had, he beat him. No one else come forward because they could see his antics. They knew what he was about. Norman has fought everybody. He's had. I mean, he went over to Cork to fight the Irish bare knuckle fighter. He beat him.
Yeah.
There was a guy with Billy McVie going back to Vic Bellamy days when Norman was helping out because they had problems with the bootleggers. I think it was in Birmingham. Am I right, Norman? And a guy called Billy McVie, a Glaswegian, complete nutter, mental case, tough man.
Do you know he killed seven?
Yeah, I know, killed seven people, and he had a nasty reputation, and he was coming down doing the bootlegging. Norman, again, being the protective guy, was protecting Vic, and Billy McVie went, come on in. Norman dropped him, just mullered him, absolutely messed him up. But Norman, being a gentleman, allowed him to get back up again. I mean, I don't think I could have done that personally because I know what them bloody jobs are like. But the thing about Norman, when he does that, they get up. A true fighter gets up respectful. Yeah. And Billy got up and said, "Yeah, you're a fucking boxer, ain't ya?" And he shook his hand and and I think he actually hugged Norman. Wow. It's just straight. This is a weird thing about it all. There's such strangeness to all this. These strange stories and strange respect that come out of all these situations. I want to see Norman now retire as the Guvnor, undefeated Guvnor. Yeah. He's got nothing but respect for the boys before him, Roy Shaw and Lenny McLean. Like, so's the whole nation. Yeah. We love the stories. Norman's a very cute guy, as you can see by he's like an encyclopedia of information, and when he's relaxed, he can tell story after story after story after story. He doesn't like boasting, but when he's challenged, forget it. He's a different character altogether. I need to get him alive, him rocking and rolling, but I just don't want Norman the fighting game's over now. He doesn't need to fight. So
it could go either way. I mean, he could end up going and doing the fighting again and getting banged towards the head or anything. I mean, look at all these boxers in the past. They've had backs to the head and all sorts. They've got brain damage. We don't want to see that with Norman.
We don't want to see. Nobody wants to see that with Norman. He's got too much to tell. He's got too much to give. And Norman wants to give it. He's got beautiful kids. He's got 6 beautiful children. And they absolutely worship. And my missus has now took two of his kids out today, and she is so proud being with them. They're polite, they're well dressed, and they absolutely worship Norman. He's got to be around to see them kids grow up, and they respect what he does and what Norman's about. He's unique in every way he can be. He is my brother, and I love him very much. And I will be supporting him. And I just want everyone else to get behind this now and support him the same way I want to support him. And let him tell the stories and let him put his legs up now.
I'm sure we'll get around to everyone seeing the video on YouTube and whatever happens to the video after this. Now we've got a few of your friends here, Norman, and I think we'll cut in a moment to go and talk to Barry Bennett.